What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that just went down on SportsCenter today, on Thanksgiving Eve, that has the entire Knicks universe buzzing with speculation and excitement about potential roster moves that could address one of their most pressing needs. I'm talking about the kind of trade rumor that makes perfect sense when you look at the organizational needs, the player availability, and the timing of everything, the type of move that doesn't shake up your entire roster, but fills a critical gap that could make the difference between a deep playoff run and an early exit. So settle in, because what I'm about to share from today's ESPN broadcast, after the Knicks absolutely dominated the Charlotte Hornets 129-101, isn't just about one impressive win. It's about how this franchise is positioning itself to make strategic moves that could elevate them to genuine championship contender status. All right, here's the situation that had the entire SportsCenter panel absolutely locked in this morning. And I'm talking about veteran NBA analysts who cover roster construction and trade scenarios every single day, but still couldn't hide their intrigue about the potential fit and timing of what they were discussing. The main story that's been percolating underneath all the coverage of the Knicks' dominant road win in Charlotte is that Jusuf Nurkic could potentially be available for trade from the Utah Jazz. And when you really understand the Knicks' center depth situation, when you see Nurkic's contract structure, when you recognize how cheaply he might be acquired, it becomes absolutely clear that this isn't just idle speculation. This is a move that could genuinely happen and make a lot of sense for everyone involved. Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we jump into this massive Knicks news, I just want to ask you for a quick favor that would mean the world to me. If you could just take 1 second right now and hit that like button, it would be incredibly important to me and helps this channel grow so much. I know it seems like a small thing, but those likes genuinely make a huge difference in getting this content out to more Knicks fans who need to stay updated on everything happening with this team. So seriously, just tap that like button real quick. It literally takes 1 second, and it helps me out more than you know. Let me start by giving you the full context that SportsCenter was establishing right at the beginning of the broadcast, because understanding the Knicks' current situation at the center position is absolutely essential for grasping why bringing in someone like Nurkic has so much strategic merit behind it. The Knicks are now 11-6 after their blowout win over Charlotte. They're firmly in 4th place in the Eastern Conference. They're playing some of their best basketball of the season, but there's this underlying concern about depth at the center spot that could become a major issue if they don't address it. Mitchell Robinson has been injury-prone throughout his career. He's dealing with various ailments right now, and the team simply cannot rely on him to stay healthy for an entire season and deep playoff run. But here's what really got the SportsCenter analysts fired up about the Nurkic possibility specifically. And this is where you start to see how all the pieces align perfectly. Nurkic is currently with the Utah Jazz, who are in full rebuild mode. They're not trying to compete for championships this year. They're accumulating young talent and draft picks for the future. Nurkic is a 31-year-old veteran on an expiring contract worth approximately $19.3 million, which means he has virtually zero long-term value to a rebuilding team, but could have significant short-term value to a contender like the Knicks. The Jazz would be happy to move him for minimal return just to clear the roster spot and give more minutes to their young players. The show dove deep into what Nurkic brings to the table as a player, and here's where you really see why, despite being in his early 30s and not the player he once was, he'd still be a valuable addition for the Knicks. Nurkic is averaging 6 rebounds per game this season, which is solid production. He can score at different levels around the basket. He's a decent passer for a big man, averaging 3.5 assists per game, and most importantly, he has extensive playoff experience from his years in Portland. He knows what it takes to compete in high-pressure postseason situations. He's been through the wars. He understands his role and what's expected from a veteran center on a contending team. What the SportsCenter crew kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding why this move makes sense right now is the contract situation and how it affects both short-term and long-term planning for the Knicks. Because Nurkic's deal expires at the end of this season, acquiring him wouldn't lock the Knicks into any long-term financial commitment. If he works out great and helps them make a deep playoff run, they could explore re-signing him to a team-friendly deal. If he doesn't work out, or if they want to pursue other options in free agency, they simply let him walk, and they haven't damaged their salary cap flexibility going forward. That optionality is huge for a front office trying to build sustainably. The panel spent extensive time discussing the Knicks' current center rotation and why adding Nurkic would provide crucial insurance and depth. Right now, they're starting Karl Anthony Towns at center in a lot of lineups, which works offensively but can create defensive vulnerabilities. Mitchell Robinson, when healthy, is their traditional rim-protecting center, but, as we've seen throughout his career, he's constantly dealing with injuries and can't be relied upon to play 30 to 35 minutes every night. The ESPN analysts were breaking down how having Nurkic as a third center option would give Mike Brown so much more flexibility in how he manages minutes and matchups throughout games and across the grueling NBA schedule. What I found particularly fascinating during today's SportsCenter discussion was when they started talking about the potential trade package and acquisition cost for Nurkic. Because the Jazz are rebuilding, and because Nurkic is on an expiring deal, his trade value is relatively low compared to what you'd normally expect for a productive veteran center. The analysts were suggesting the Knicks could probably acquire him for a couple of second-round draft picks, or maybe a young player who's fallen out of the rotation. That's an incredibly cheap price to pay for a player who could legitimately contribute meaningful minutes in the playoffs, and it's the kind of low-risk, medium-reward move that smart organizations make when they're trying to shore up depth. The show also explored how Nurkic would fit into the Knicks' playing style and offensive system, and this sparked really interesting debates among the panel. Some analysts argued that Nurkic's skill set as a passing big man who can facilitate from the high post would actually complement what the Knicks do really well, that he could be a hub for ball movement and help generate open looks for shooters. Others countered that his lack of mobility and declining athleticism could be exploited by quicker, more versatile modern centers in playoff matchups. The consensus seemed to be that as a third center getting 10 to 15 minutes per game in specific matchups, Nurkic would be perfectly fine and potentially quite valuable. What the SportsCenter crew kept coming back to, and I think this is absolutely vital for understanding the Knicks' championship window, is that they're in win-now mode and can't afford to have depth gaps that get exposed in the playoff. We saw last year how important having multiple capable centers was for teams that made deep runs, how injuries and foul trouble and matchup problems all require you to have options, rather than being forced to play guys extended minutes when they're gassed or not suited for particular opponents. Nurkic provides that insurance policy, that safety net that could prevent a single injury or bad matchup from derailing an entire playoff series. The panel also discussed the broader context of the Knicks' season and where they stand relative to the Eastern Conference hierarchy. At 11-6, they're playing well and positioned nicely, but they're not the clear favorites. They're not the team everyone is scared of yet. The analysts were going through the Eastern Conference standings, showing how Oklahoma City at 18-1 looks like the team to beat if they come out of the West. How the Knicks need to continue improving and addressing weaknesses if they want to genuinely compete for a championship. Adding Nurkic wouldn't be a splashy move that generates massive headlines, but it would be a smart, strategic move that makes the roster more complete. One thing that came up during the ESPN analysis that I thought was absolutely fascinating was the discussion about Mitchell Robinson's situation and how that factors into potential moves. Robinson has been one of the worst defensive players in the NBA statistically while OG Anunoby has been out, which is stunning considering his reputation as an elite rim protector. The SportsCenter crew was showing advanced metrics demonstrating how much the Knicks' defense has struggled with Robinson on the court in certain lineups, and questioning whether his injury issues and inconsistent play mean the organization needs to start planning for life after him as their primary backup center. What really struck me during the ESPN discussion was when they started connecting this potential Nurkic acquisition to the absolutely dominant performance the Knicks just put on against Charlotte. The team shot 56% from the field, 52% from three-point range. They dominated the paint 64-40. They controlled every aspect of the game from start to finish. Jalen Brunson had 33 points and was absolutely masterful with his ability to create space and score from anywhere. Josh Hart bounced back with 22 points after struggling recently, showing the versatility and toughness that makes him so valuable. Mikal Bridges was a defensive demon with 3 steals and playing both ends at an elite level. The show spent considerable time praising Mike Brown's decision to change the starting lineup, bringing Mitchell Robinson off the bench and starting a smaller lineup with more perimeter skill. That decision paid off, with Robinson being a +18 in just 17 minutes despite scoring 0 points, showing that his impact goes beyond the stat sheet when he's playing with energy and focus. The Sports Center analysts were discussing how Brown's willingness to experiment and adjust based on what he's seeing shows the kind of coaching flexibility that championship teams need, and how adding someone like Nurkic would give him even more lineup combinations to deploy in different situations. What I loved about today's Sports Center coverage was how they put the Knicks' win in proper context, while also looking ahead to the challenges coming. Yes, they destroyed Charlotte, but the Hornets are 4-12 and not a playoff team. The real tests are coming against Milwaukee, against Toronto, against the elite Eastern Conference competition that will determine whether this Knicks team is for real or just beating up on inferior opponents. The analysts were particularly focused on the upcoming game against the Bucks, noting that even though Milwaukee is struggling without Giannis at full health, you know Giannis is going to come back for that Knicks game and be motivated to prove something. The panel also explored the bigger picture of where the Knicks stand in their championship pursuit and what additional moves beyond Nurkic might be necessary. They discussed how getting OG Anunoby and Landry Shamet back healthy would be huge for their two-way versatility, how the defense needs to tighten up from where it's been, how they need to maintain this offensive efficiency against better competition. The consensus seemed to be that the Knicks have the foundation of a championship-caliber team, but need to continue making smart, incremental improvements rather than one massive blockbuster move. One aspect that got really interesting discussion on SportsCenter was the accountability and culture that Mike Brown and the veteran players are building. The analysts showed clips of Brown talking about sacrifice and how every player on the roster could start, but someone has to accept a bench role for the good of the team. They highlighted how Mikal Bridges has become the vocal leader who holds teammates accountable, how he's not afraid to get in guys' faces when they're not playing hard enough or making mental mistakes. That kind of culture where players police each other and demand excellence is what separates good teams from championship teams. Listen, after watching the entire Sports Center segment today, covering the Knicks' dominant win over Charlotte and the potential Nurkic trade possibilities, I'm absolutely convinced this team is building something special and making the kind of smart moves that contenders make. Nurkic wouldn't be a sexy acquisition that dominates headlines, but he'd be exactly the kind of veteran depth piece that could make the difference in a playoff series when injuries or matchup problems arise. His expiring contract makes it a zero-risk move financially. The acquisition cost would be minimal, and the potential benefit of having a capable third center option could be enormous. Combined with the way guys like Brunson, Bridges, and even Josh Hart are playing right now, the Knicks are positioning themselves as a legitimate threat in the Eastern Conference who could absolutely make noise if they make it to the playoffs healthy and with proper depth at every position.